I love the tech, and I guess I like to talk about it, and community is a way for people to talk to people about things that I really care about. I walked into so many good opportunities, and I feel like it's my obligation to help other people and help bring them on these journeys as well.
Wow.
And selfishly as well, we have such a shortage of people in the industry, and the industry is crying out for people, and we need to do better, as an industry as a whole. We need to do better to support more people coming in, drive diversity, and help people look at different ways of entering the industry, because that is such a challenge for all of us.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Azure All Stars, this show where we put the spotlights on stars from the community and the work they do in the hopes of inspiring others to follow. I'm Ahmed.
And I'm Luke.
And we're your host for this podcast. In this episode, we've got the amazing Daniel. I have actually been thinking about this episode for a very long time, and I've really happy for you joining us. Thank you so much for making the time and come and joining us. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you guys for inviting me, and it's a real pleasure. And I honestly don't know if I can live up to the All Stars moniker, but I'll do my best. We've all known each other for ages, and I've had the pleasure to work with you guys. So I'm lucky to be here.
Cheers. We are lucky to have you, actually. Your story is really beautiful, and really love for people to be inspired by your story. And yeah, there's a lot of amazing work that I've seen firsthand that you do behind the scenes. Not a lot of people actually see that. It's amazing how much you donate of your time, your attention, and work. I've seen you literally. Anyway, we'll go through all these. But yeah, thank you, mate, for making the time. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on that, we debated a lot on actually bringing official Microsoft people into this call, because it's all about the community, right? And as soon as we start going, oh, we'll get people who are paid to do this, it can blur the lines a bit between community involvement and actually work. And we just didn't want to, but your involvement is just I guess, is a lot more than just your work. It's your life, it's your lifestyle, it's your reason for being, community, right? Just like us, just like any other MVP, just like anyone else who does huge community work.
Exactly. Thank you for bringing that, Luke. Actually, that's a very good point. Daniel is a star in his work. Daniel is a star outside of his work, because, and again, like Luke said, that's what we do. We want to put the spotlight on the people active in the community, and I see you do that all the time. And like Luke and I are being paid to work on Microsoft technology, and that's what we love, and it's our passion. But outside of that, we do amazing. Being very polite.
No, you do amazing. Come on, own it.
You do amazing.
Very modest here. Sorry. Anyway, being donating our time, which is something that we love, and you doing the same thing here. So thank you again, Daniel, mate. That's awesome.
Yep. My pleasure. And that's a really good start into our first question. So your personal journey. So, Dan, are you able to share your story about entering the tech world and what moments may have shaped your path, throughout, from start maybe to finish? What drove you? What is your key?
Yeah. Hey, happy to. Really, I'm very lucky. I'm really lucky. I'm really privileged, because I knew from the minute I received a Dick Smith VZ200 computer with 16K of RAM from my dad, who came back from Australia, I knew I was going to be working with computers, right? It was a computer with Z80 CPU, which may not mean much to many folk out there. It might, but and it plugged into a TV, but we didn't have a TV. But it had a rubber keyboard, and every time you pushed a button, it made a beep, so you knew you'd pressed a key. And it came with a book of the language, programs. You type it in, and it maybe turned your computer into a keyboard. But I didn't have a TV, so I used to type all the programs in, and then at the end type run, and just hope they worked. And if they worked, I might have a thing that played some music or something, because I had no way to see what was actually on the screen. But that sort of indicated, yeah, I was obsessed with these things. My parents sent me to a computer camp, which was these things you had back then.
Wow.
You'd all spend, a bunch of kids would go to a camp for a week and spend, time with Logo turtles and Apple IIes and all sorts of
that would have been cool. Yeah.
It was amazing. It was so cool. You got to try all these different computers, different approaches. It was amazing. So yeah, that was where I started. That was the big moment for me. And then yeah, just uni didn't have computers at school, but had an Amiga 500. Man, though I love Amiga, still fond of that. Amstrad before that. Learned to program assembly because I found you couldn't get the performance you needed. I thought I was going to be a games programmer. Never happened. I ended up going into apps, and the rest is history. I spent 13, 14 years at a startup. I was an airline. I worked airlines, and but all of the time I was coding. So
beautiful. This is just a beautiful story, and like Luke said before we started this, the most important part of any episode that we have, and the moment that we cherish, is everybody's story. So that is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, which is like, I really thought about this word, which is like, I think of you as a pillar in the community in New Zealand and in Auckland, because you are literally involved in the community, helping people, whether it's people learning about Azure, about DevOps, cloud native, GitHub. You are there, and I've been and I've seen you firsthand, like literally late in the day, like 8, 9 p.m. You're still like holding the fort and then helping people. And then it's not easy. You're donating so much time, so much of your time. So first of all, thank you for that. You've been an awesome support for all of us. That's awesome. And you're actually one of the first people that I ever talked to when I joined one of the Aotearoa Azure meetup, and you're the first Microsoft person that I talked to at the time. And yeah, so like, what is driving this passion, and like, why do you feel that you want to support the community?
Look, it's a great question. There's probably multiple reasons, and I guess there is. I love the tech, and I guess I like to talk about it, and community is a way for people to talk to people about things that I really care about. And I also feel, as I said, I feel really privileged. I was lucky. I had all the benefits. I walked into so many good opportunities, and I feel like it's my obligation to help other people and help bring them on these journeys as well.
Wow.
And selfishly as well, we have such a shortage of people in the industry, and the industry is crying out for people. And we need to do better. As an industry as a whole, we need to do better to support more people coming in, drive diversity, and help people look at different ways of entering the industry, because that is such a challenge for all of us. And I guess the final reason really is it's a little bit of fear. I mean, I'm constantly afraid I'm going to fall behind. I feel like I'm an imposter most of the time. I feel like I don't know enough, and this is a great way to keep me driving my own learning, my own capability, improving myself, because I'm terrified.
It's funny. I can almost agree 100% with that, because I think fear is probably my most driver as well, because you're surrounded by a whole lot of people. It's that iceberg thing, right? So you only see what's on top of the water. You don't see what's underneath, which is all the fails, the success, the falling down the stairs, you just see what's on top of that iceberg. And I think fear is a real motivator.
Yeah it is. I mean, and you see everyone around doing so many amazing things, and that is such a powerful motivator for some people. But also we tend to I tend to go, wow, that is all there is. As you said, there's nothing under the iceberg. But it's actually, there's so many other people who do so much great stuff but don't talk about it, and they don't. There's not that visibility. But it was also, there's so many people who face the same, you know, a whole lot of challenges and feel the same as us, which is this, I'm an imposter in this industry. Everyone else is doing amazing things. And I think that's, you know, no one's alone. And I haven't met anyone who said, you know what, yeah, that's totally true. You know, I don't feel imposter syndrome at all.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, so true.
So that's great. So along with helping, you know, the community in large, and you've been doing it for as long as I can remember, which is a good thing. And even before you worked at Microsoft, but you're also you also collaborate outside of just talking in the room and talking and helping people at meetups, but you collaborate a lot with like the Microsoft Learn documentation as well. So one of the recognitions of that is the Azure Architecture Center Collaborator and the Azure Architecture Center Expert badges that Microsoft dish out as part of the collaboration program. And you see a lot of this like pop up on LinkedIn by people who have edited the Azure Architecture docs. So could you tell us more about how that works and, you know, how you've contributed to the docs on Microsoft Learn?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the great thing about all Microsoft Docs, right, is they are open. You know, it's all stored on GitHub, and you can, you know, anyone can contribute to it. But there is a lot of internally at Microsoft, and I think this is okay to share because it's fairly public, is there is a whole lot of groups or communities which are things like the architecture review boards, whose role is to try and make sure all the architecture documents are up to date, and you know, the best practices are being followed and they're updated. And one of the communities I'm in part of is the multi-tenant and SaaS architecture review board, and there are many others. You know, there'll be some on ML and DevOps and all these sorts of practices. But myself and a bunch of others, you know, John Downs and people like that, have all been part of this community. And what we do is look at as the documentation as a whole and say, what are the conversations we're having where we go, oh, it'd be great if there was a document on that. And fundamentally, it comes down to us saying, well, there's a gap. We wish we could fill it. Oh, well, wait, we can. So as part of that, there's a whole lot of tooling that Microsoft provides. We all use Visual Studio Code. There's a whole lot of these extensions. Highly, if you're wanting to contribute, they're great extensions. There's something called the Docs Markup, the Docs extension pack for Visual Studio, I think it's called. It contains a bunch of tools to help you write documentation the way that it needs to be written in for Architecture Center or for Microsoft Docs, Microsoft Learn. Sorry, it's now called Learn these days, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, we all got to contributing, and you know, it's very rewarding because you get to think about, you get to collaborate with people internally at Microsoft, but also people outside your organization at Microsoft, and even the community, saying, what do we, where are the gaps? Where are we not covering your questions? And where are you doing things that actually we should learn from you and make that an official approach or an approach we recommend? So we all sit down, we meet once a week, we have a huge number of people all contributing and putting these documentation docs together, and still we have a shortage. So if you see gaps, please feel free to reach out or even contribute. It's all done via GitHub. But when you do those documents, there is metadata, and you do get awards. So if you contribute to either new docs or updating existing ones, and you can go, to be honest, I'm looking at the docs thinking I have to know, we've recently changed Azure AD to Entra ID, and as many people may know, there's a lot of docs to be updated. And although we have automated tools to do a lot of it, there's still stuff that I need to do. Now you can go and do a PR to change some of that, and you can earn those contributor badges, right? It's often that easy. And that's one way, a great way to get started and help, and just looking for, hey, I could improve that. The clarity's not, best there. Hopefully we catch things like spelling mistakes when we contribute, but you never know, right? There's an opportunity for everyone to get involved. And it's really rewarding because you'd be surprised how many people read those docs on a daily basis. Well, you might not be surprised, but there is, tens and tens of thousands, of people reading them.
Yeah, that's right.
I think you touched on something really key, and that's around, well, key for me, and that's around, as someone who's edited some Microsoft Docs myself, or Microsoft Learn documentation myself, I think the key is it is open source. It is, like, I've edited multi-tenant Microsoft Learn documentation, and then it's gone to John Downs for approval, right? But me as a community contributor can do that. Like, I can just go to the website, I can click the little edit button, I can edit it on my Git repo, using Visual Studio Code or straight out of the web interface, and I'm enabled to do that. Whether or not they get approved or not is entirely up to the product teams and things like that, which is really cool. But I think what I'm trying to make clear is that I hear a lot of, just like anything, right? You hear people moaning about, oh, the Microsoft Docs don't make sense, or they're missing something. Like, you're enabled to fix these problems yourself. Like, Microsoft's a huge company, multiple dozens of products, different product teams working to deliver outcomes that you use to enable businesses and individuals, right? So, but the documents can sometimes fall behind, or they may not be written in a way that makes sense, or even comes up in your search engines and things like that. So I think I just want to make it clear to the people watching this that you're enabled to fix these.
And I would absolutely encourage, even if you're not, you don't feel like you want, have the time. And I appreciate these things are, as you said, going through the code review, the review process can be a bit of back and forth. Even if you don't have the bandwidth to do this, chuck an issue in, because the people who wrote the docs get that issue, and then we go, oh wow, we really have got a gap there, we haven't filled that. Or we may go, hey, actually there's an answer to this over here and we need to bring it in. There's lots of things that can happen. It's always just so useful to us to know, to hear from the community where we're not doing the right thing. So yeah, I'd encourage everyone, click the little issue button, raise an issue with this page. I think I can't remember, it's either the top or the bottom, but yeah, click it and raise it. It takes you to GitHub. You just raise an issue against the page. It goes to whoever's contributed to that page, and then we can go and look at it. And I know, Luke, I saw your issues go through, so I know you've been through, your PRs, you've been through the process.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, actually talking about contributing, I was going through your profile and checking, and I found, first of all, you've got an amazing blog, and what I've seen, like, your blogs are, the post that you go through is really, really thorough and like very extensive. You go through whatever technology, whether it's AKS or like talking about something using Azure DevOps, PowerShell, and you also have actually got an amazing GitHub page. I think you've got a repo called Cosmos DB PowerShell module, and you also have something called Lab Builder. So can you tell us a little bit about those your GitHub repos and your blog posts, and which one of them, like, particularly you're proud of, or like you're so happy that people can
that's a good question. I mean, I as I said, I spent 13-14 years writing code in a software firm, and then this DevOps stuff came along. I sort of basically started to really fall in love with DevOps, but I sort of felt like I had burnt out on the startup side of things. So I decided I would really look into DevOps, but I felt after looking into it, I needed more of a grounding in infrastructure and the operations side, right? It's all great to have the dev side and know how a developer works, but I feel like I was going to do a lot better if I could have a stronger operations grounding. So I spent a lot of time on really grounding myself in that. I did all my pre-Azure, Windows Server certs, and I got really into PowerShell because it gave me an opportunity to combine coding, which I love, and all the other operational side of things. So as part of this process of going, I need to figure out how I build a brand myself, because I can't remember, someone said, look, the biggest thing you need to do is build yourself a brand, even if it's, you know, slightly fuzzy around the edge, and even if it's not, or, you know, it's a public profile as opposed to, you know, what you're building a brand. So I decided I'll do a blog. I'll talk about my journey into the things I learned, because I would encounter sort of weird issues and investigating Windows Server things and early Docker on Windows and issues like that. And I thought, well, you know what, I'll just set a challenge and I'll write a post about every one of these issues, and maybe someone will decide this is useful. But one thing I found was I found a way of deploying ESXi on Windows in a container. Or no, in a Hyper-V. That's right. Basically, I can't. It's so long ago, I can't remember. That post became hugely popular, and because everyone was wanting to do it. And so that was probably what set my blog off, going from maybe one user, one view per day, and it was one view per day for about 3 months. It got up to several thousand a day. But those first 3 months, I was going, oh well, no one's reading it. Doesn't matter. It's just my personal thoughts. But all of a sudden, it happened like that. So I was fairly proud of it. But at the same time, I look back and I go, wow, what rubbish I wrote. But they were my observations, and I think that's what I tell other people these days is, doesn't your unique perspective is yours, and it's so important. Like, just write stuff down, even if no one reads it. It's a good way for you to remember. And I found I would encounter the same problem over and over, and I could actually refer people to my blog posts and go, oh yeah, I solved that. And it was like, wow. And that I found was really useful. And also, I'd write something down, and then I'd forget exactly what I did, but it was something I could go and refer back to and go, yeah, I solved that problem. That's right. And here, so it was kind of like, helping my bad memory, right? I got terrible memory. So that was really helpful for me
That's why we have technology, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was really, really useful. So, but yeah, I mean, but out of that, I got into PowerShell, and I I found this interesting technology called desired state configuration, right? Which was it's actually the second thing Microsoft open sourced, right? So Microsoft was not big in the open source world, and everything was on, what was that old platform? I can't remember what it was called. Pre-GitHub anyway. There was an open source platform. Microsoft.
Yeah, I remember that.
I should remember it, but anyway, DSC was sort of the first trip into GitHub. So DSC was for managing state of infrastructure, specifically Windows, to manage the state of a machine. So desired state. And it was built into Windows, and I found that Microsoft had open sourced all these resources, which were the components of DSC, which did the work of setting, defining, and testing the state of the machine. They're written in PowerShell, and I thought this is a good way for me to do some open source contributions, do PowerShell, and write code. I mean, it was a win-win, triple win. And I started getting involved really early on. And as part of doing my certification, I found for Windows Server, I found that I was building machines constantly. I had a Hyper-V host. I was constantly building and tearing down machines, the same machines, an AD Forest and a whole bunch of, cluster nodes, and, the same things. So I thought, well, why can't I just automate the building of an entire lab so that I can set up a base lab and then do some testing, do some stuff, and then tear it down. So that's where Lab Builder came from, which was me building basically an extension around DSC that was basically a script that you could define a lab using XML. This was XML days when XML was still a thing.
Pre-Copilot, by the way.
It was now. I mean, I look at it now and I go, oh, why would I do that? I mean, JSON would have been, at least I didn't use YAML, but enough said. Anyway, so I built that as an excuse to just get better at PowerShell and do DSC and build a lab. And it's not well used, but it's enough people at the time used it. I don't think people probably use it much now because, I mean, we don't even worry about VMs these days. At least I don't. But that taught me DSC. The DSC team at the time was all run by Microsoft, and all these resources were run by the Microsoft team. And then over time, they decided, the community, these are community resources. The community pretty much own them, so they set up a community organization to hand all of this product over to the community. So this was one of the first Microsoft incubated projects, which was handed over to the community. So I'm still on one of the community organizers. don't have as much time as I used to. Myself with Gail Colas and Johan Lundgren, as well as a couple of the people from the who are now like Michael Green and the Azure Auto Manage team, and so we sort of look after this community and try and keep these DSC resources going. But it taught me so much about DevOps, right?
Nice.
We have such thorough testing regimes across these things because networking DSC, right? One of the main modules that is
just having a look. It's the eighth most popular module on the PowerShell gallery still to this day.
Wow.
Networking DSC.
Yeah. So we break it. It's a big deal. It's an issue. So and it is used. It's used in Azure. It's used on prem. So it taught me a lot, right? I think that was a great opportunity, and I thank Microsoft for really handing all of that work over to the community and keep supporting it as it goes along, because it is used in Azure, and as Azure DSC and now Azure Auto Manage, whatever the name is now.
Guest configuration or machine configuration.
It was guest configuration. It's now called Azure. I think now it's called Azure Auto Manage Machine, Auto Manage VM. Anyway.
Nice.
Sure. Anyway, so a lot of words there, but I think getting involved with putting my code making my code public, however bad it is, and I look at it now and I go, oh, that's awful. I'm so embarrassed. But it was, it was cool. Same with Cosmos DB module. I saw it. I needed something, and I thought, well, this is an opportunity to write better. Use better techniques, and now that module, it's been around for a while, and apparently people still use it. So,
but it worked, right? That was the whole point. Even though it may not be written as your knowledge of stuff and content's changed on how to do things over the years, it worked. So that was the main thing. So
filled a gap.
Filled a gap. So DSC aside, Azure Open AI is huge. Obviously, it's taken the industry by storm this year alone. Azure has their own implementation of it, obviously with a lot more security controls and RBAC and everything you come to expect from an Azure platform service.
Yeah.
But your particular involvement is impressive. What elements of Azure Open AI, or just the AI in general, excite you the most, and what do you want the community to take away from anything to do with AI?
Everything excites me about it right now, right? I have to admit, I didn't at the time, 2 years ago, that I started to get involved with the OpenAI service before it was released. I didn't get it. I have to admit, hand on heart, didn't get it. Went, chatbot, yay.
Yeah.
I think what I now realize is that it is not a chatbot. It is an engine that is a very, very powerful tool for helping reason over data and make decisions that we can use to enhance so many different processes and patterns. And it can be very powerful as a chat tool because it can understand language and it can produce language. But I think, obviously we're seeing it far beyond. We're seeing, we sort of talk about large language models, but now we should really be talking about large foundational models, because foundational models covers image and video and audio and all these other model types. So I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about multimodal models, like GPT-4V, which takes text and images in and produces an output, and those are just mind-numbingly cool. I think help seeing how we can use those tools to improve so many different processes. I think health is going to be amazing. Is going to have some really amazing opportunities to help all of these busy clinical people. And obviously we're going to have to be very careful about how it's used, and we need humans involved in every step and every process. But I think helping, using this technology to help take away some of these mundane tasks. Personally, now this is no diss at any big company, but any big company has so many horrible processes, so many processes that are essential to the business but suck. I cannot wait for all those processes, these tools to help me with those processes, right? I think everyone here hears me, understands where that is, and I think I just can't get enough of the technology. But also it's a little bit of fear driven, right? I feel like I have to be involved in every part of this, because oh my God, if I step back for one day, the technology is going to completely move on and I will be lost. There is a fear there, and I think everyone fears, lots of people feel that worry, but it is not the case, right? It is moving, but we can catch up very quickly. Tools are going to help us catch up as well. AI summarization of what's happened in the last 24 hours. We can take a week off. It's all good.
It's the whole, because I remember the whole, and it's still to this day. It's like, well, how do you keep up with what's going on in Azure? How do you keep up with what's going on with Microsoft? And it's like, the reality is you can do your best, but you'll burn yourself out. You'll get you won't fully understand what's going on. It's like you just do what you can when you can, concentrate on your areas of passion. But yeah, you're always constantly chasing that. I don't know if high is probably the best word to describe it, but yeah, that's the update. But what was interesting is I watched a video on Tesla's new full self-driving V12. And so I don't know if you know, but Tesla has written a lot of the self-driving functionality in C#. So pretty much they've gone line by code to go, if this does this, then do this, and blah blah blah. And it's reasonably, in my opinion, reasonably well and done. But they've ditched that by just uploading a whole lot of videos to the Tesla AI engine that the cars can just learn off. So they've got really good drivers, and then getting the cars to just generate, like, it's not Azure AI, but it's just the technology is just going to change,
Totally.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the one thing that actually stuck with me when I first heard about Azure AI is that the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman at one time said, what I could just do, like I take 15 minutes and ask the AI to actually teach me something. And that is like really a powerful use case of the AI, is that you could literally ask it anything, and you could say, like, I'm still confused. I don't understand it. Can you explain it to me? Can you teach me more? And what about this? What about that? That is like literally an enablement tool for anybody learning about any topic. And yeah, like you said, there are so many ways of actually using the AI as opposed to just summarizing or like going through. It's the processes, for example, documentation and maybe understanding like a recurring theme, or like even sometimes is like, for example, that now the Bing Enterprise, like you could just literally put a like a 20-30 email chain of people talking and sending email, and I was like, can you catch me up? And it would actually go through it, and I was like, okay, yeah, so this is what is going on. X is asking Y, and blah blah blah. Anyway, so we could spend the whole thing talking about AI.
Oh, we could.
maybe
super cool.
we'll do it sometime in the future. We are cooking something, me and Luke, and hopefully we'll announce it very soon. But yeah,
Awesome.
maybe we'll do. Yeah, going back to our start here. So you actually were an MVP even before joining Microsoft. So I was surprised to actually know that. Not really surprised, but that is super cool. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what work got you the award? And yeah.
Yeah, happy to. And actually, I was an MVP 4 years or 3 years. I can't remember. Like Luke, and I could see the MVP award, but back there, I love it. I didn't set out to be an MVP. I just sort of started doing a bunch of community work, just doing stuff, and then someone at Microsoft said, "Oh, are you an MVP?" And I went, "No," and they went, "Oh, well, I'll nominate you." And then it happened 3 more times. I think a bunch of people nominated me for an MVP, and yeah, it just sort of happened over time, and I was really lucky because it was pre-COVID. And so I get to go, there's a thing called MVP Summit that MVPs can go to every year. We get to yell at the product group. Sorry, that's not something Microsoft. Passionate. So no, we always joke. It's a way to provide. It's a great way. The MVPs are sort of seen as an extension of Microsoft in the field, where you can say, this is what's wrong. This is what you're not doing right. Here's all the things that, we as being in the field in the community see, which is so valuable. So the MVPs as part of this go to Seattle once a year and get to go to Microsoft campus, which is super cool and exciting. I know, Luke, I think you went this year. That was is such an amazing experience. But yeah, you see people go, I don't like this about this product, to the product group, and that would, that was a really great experience to see the product group just taking on this feedback and going, great, it's how we're going to improve. That's what we need to think about these things, and hey, we're learning from you as much as you're learning from us. But yeah, being an MVP is as Luke will tell you, it's very, very rewarding, but it's one of those things you sort of don't try to be. You just do community stuff, and you get recognized, and it happens, and that's how it should be. It's sort of, you're doing the community stuff because you love the community and you like being part of it, and it's and then Microsoft sort of receives it and recognizes you for that contribution. But I got booted out because you can't be an MVP while you're at Microsoft. So sadly, but I still get to support the MVPs. So I work, I get to be in the MVP, like there's a little private channels that we have the MVPs, and we get to go to little the MVP catch ups, and because we need to support our MVPs because they do so much that, not so myself, but Luke, you guys all do so much for the community that the more we can support you, the better. So yeah, just shout out to the MVPs for all the work you all do. I feel like
it's great that you were MVP, and obviously you can't be an MVP and join Microsoft. You lose the award, but I think there's MVP alumni now that
yep you get free GitHub Pro, I think, for being an alumni.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, you don't get interestingly, you don't get MVP GitHub Pro if you're Microsoft. So I'm lucky. I get for being an MVP, for being an alumni, I get GitHub Pro, whereas FTEs don't. I don't know what it means, but
it's probably one of my most used benefits. But yeah, it's like, you get a whole lot of benefits from it, but it's a lot of hard work. But if you're doing it because you love to do it, then it's natural. But yeah, it's really cool. I think the MVP program in itself is, I think we could potentially be used more. Like I know that I see us more of, like you said, almost an extension, but we almost I wouldn't say free resource, because Microsoft pays for, like, one of my benefits is like an M365 tenant, right? And Azure credit to develop stuff for the community, which is really useful. But like, we're eager, we're passionate, you know, there's all this stuff going on. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I think there is way more that we all at Microsoft could do, do to support. And I think a lot of it is just going, hey, you're running a great event. Why aren't we marketing? Why aren't we telling people about your great event?
Yeah,
and again,
exactly.
we got to be real. I like the fact that the MVPs are not Microsoft. They're seen as community leaders who are not paid to do things for Microsoft. You do things because you like the technology, you're passionate about it. And I think that's really important. So we've always got to be very careful and make sure, as you said, the community dividing line has to be quite clear. This is community. Community is going to talk about what community talks about, and they're very separate. So but supporting you, giving you pizza, all of the things that helps, doesn't make a good community, but just helps you make a good community, right? It's us giving you support so that you can do all the great stuff, because it's hard work. I know it's, organizing an event, Ahmed, we all, I know you you put so much time into it, and so many people get so much out of it, but it seems like, it's a duck swimming across the lake, right? It's all very, as a duck, smooth, yeah, it swims smoothly across, but there's always, so much stuff that happens behind the scenes and getting everyone synced up. So thank you. Saying thank you.
Thank you, mate.
So we touched on this before, and it kind of alludes to, your community involvement and advocacy for diversity and inclusion, which is great. What I think you touched on it before by saying, you were very privileged or very lucky. Yeah,
lucky.
I don't know if privilege was the right word, but lucky to have the opportunities that you do. Could you explain more about how diversity and inclusion is integrated into what you do, just a bit further?
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft obviously is very passionate about this, but I think it's not just passionate because it's the right thing to do. It's passionate because it makes good business sense. We are never going to be successful if we're not including the community, the people we're selling to, right? There's a good chunk of the people who we're selling to don't match who we all are. And so we need to be able to include them there, but also we need to be driving diversity of thought into everything we do. That's where innovation comes from. So this is very much a incredibly important aspect of Microsoft, but I think it's incredibly important for me, who's trying to support all the businesses and trying to support all the people, by saying we need to get better at doing this, because we keep we don't pat ourselves on the back. We say, hey, we've got better, but we still have a long way to go. We look around the diversity in the engineering community, and it's far from where we need it to be. And we know there's a huge engineering capability gap. I think the other thing that we sort of need to and I think AI, of all things, is going to maybe help this, is that the way we interact with AI and control and innovate with AI has a slightly different approach, and it's going to level. And there's a good Harvard study talking about leveling the playing field, leveling the skill gap. So people with different approaches, people who's not, someone who's not a hardcore rockstar developer can get involved and build amazing innovation using AI without having that background. And I think that's going to draw more people who go, you know what, I don't want to be the stuck in a cupboard coder. I want to be interacting with people. I want to, and AI has a psychology to it, right? Interacting with AI is part psychology, part reasoning. And I think that's going to attract other people and open the door for many other diverse group of people, more diversity of people getting involved with it and using it and developing it and innovating with it. And I think that's going to be great for everyone. I'm excited to see what that brings, but we still are a long way away from that. So what are we doing now. And I would, I think we need to just make sure there's a space for other voices in the community. We need to make sure there's an opportunity, and we're being as supportive to everyone as we can, and actually being, I think it's when we call for speakers, right, it's we tend to get the same group of speakers. How do we reach more and say, you know what, we don't just want hardcore, we want to hear from everyone's perspective. Everyone's unique perspective is unique. I think maybe it was one of the old MVP coordinators said this to me once, or said to all the MVPs in a session once, which was like, everyone's perspective on learning a specific thing is different, and everyone's journey. So even if you know that someone else has written or shared the same content, or shared a similar idea before, your perspective on it is unique. And so don't just say, oh, well, someone else has already done this, I'm not going to do it. You should do it anyway. And that will, if we can encourage and support more people to do this and engage the community in smaller ways, like you don't have to do a 40-minute presentation. You can come and do do whatever you feel you safe to do, and we'll support you doing it. But that's what we really got to do. And I know we're all trying to do that, but I think we, got to keep trying harder.
One of I'll just add something here. I was, as you said, I was lucky enough to go to the Redmond Microsoft campus back in April. I think Elizabeth, the CPM for the Microsoft Community Manager, just said it was like Luke's Disneyland. It was amazing. But one of the places that I was lucky enough to go to was the accessibility lab. And so that was all about just Microsoft making visibility of how people that may have disabilities, like someone may not have an arm, or any arms or a feet, or them just something just not what we would class as normal, and how they interface with technology, right? And it was really interesting from my perspective, because it's changed it. Because one of the things that they showed was a gaming device, and it wasn't a Xbox gaming controller like you would think. It was actually a device that you blew into, and then blowing into it controls kind of where, where the cursor or where the game interface. And it's something, one of the things the presenter told me is, you may look at him and say he's disabled, like he's disabled because he doesn't have an arm, or half an arm, and so he cannot use the Xbox controller. But the view that was explained to me, and this revealed kind of the bias that I had and opened up my world a lot more, was actually the disability is the Xbox controller itself, because the Xbox controller can't be used by everyone with may not have full capability of what we're lucky to have. And that changed my perspective around, actually, it's the tools that we're developing for people to use. That's the disability, not what other people have. So I just thought it was worth calling out, because it was a really interesting experience.
That's so beautiful, actually.
That's so critical. I was going to say that's also World People with Disabilities Day. I think it's coming out the end of November. But I would call out, I'm going to shameless plug for, there is a bunch of accessibility checker tools for software that are provided free from Microsoft. And one of the things we try and do every year is we try and have a session where we get people who are developing software to come in and learn to use these tools. They're so easy. They're just extensions to the browser. So if you're building, or if you're building a web app, they're extensions in your browser, or if you're building desktop apps or mobile apps, there's versions for those. But it's amazing how simple they are to use, and how you can just get better accessibility, because half the time you're missing out on opportunities because you're excluding people from using your tools and software. So just plug that out, do a search for Microsoft Accessibility Checker, and they're all free. They're just open source tools. You can just use them, go use them, build better accessibility software. Often it's just colors. It's just things, simple stuff, simple changes. You're not, and it even integrates with Azure DevOps and GitHub issues. So it'll even raise an issue that you can go in, your dev teams can go and fix. I mean, why wouldn't you do this, right? It's a no-brainer.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, mate. That was awesome, and thank you, Luke. That was an awesome story. Yeah. So the other thing, which is that I see a lot of people actually ask me, pretty sure a lot of people ask you guys as well about certification. So some people think like there is value in certification. Some people there's no value. Some people think like if I get a certification or a certificate, would I be able to learn the job or like learn the role? In my mind, I see maybe that like the solution is in the middle. Like you need certification, and you need like some sort of like you challenging yourself, like what we mentioned about building the lab builder, like having an excuse for you to actually to learn, but at the same time showing something that you built if you're trying to get a job or like you're trying to break into the world of technology. So how did you see like you've got a lot of certification, which is beautiful. So how did certification affect your journey, and how did it like help you or like guide you in your journey and your way through the technology?
Again, a great question, because I spend lots of time telling people to get certifications, but I think it's not obviously it's not the certification that's the value. It's the learning you do to get there, and sometimes it's just the motivator, right? It's the I'm forcing myself. I'm a bit slack. I have to admit, I kind of slack off a bit. If I have a deadline and say I have to do a certification by this time, I book it in. That's the motivator for me to learn. But I tend to overlearn, right? I tend to panic, and I go, I have to know everything. And that's not terrible, but it, obviously puts a lot of stress on me. But it's not terrible because I learn all the stuff in very, very detail. I think how we learn is going to change, though. I really do think with AI, we're going to learn in a different way, because so much knowledge, there is so much knowledge, so much to know, that we can never even know it all. And it's going to be so easy for us to look it up. But how do we get the concepts? What's good design? What's good architecture? How do these things fit together and work together? The details we can look up, but how do we really think about a good design? That's going to be more important, I think, and we'll see maybe certifications change in that way. But it's just a good place. Don't feel like you don't know something because you haven't got a certification, but if you want to force yourself to learn something new, certification is a great way to commit.
It's a learning pathway, right? It's the pathway to learn a subject. Right?
Yep. And build something with it. Best way ever is build something with it, right? Not just learn it, do it. I can't encourage that enough. Get a free, whatever it is you're trying to use, go build, find an opportunity to build something, especially if you find it useful. I'm building myself a game master copilot because I played role-playing games, and I thought, well, I don't have enough time to build role-playing, set up for the role-playing game. Why don't I build an AI, use AI to help me? And, there's an opportunity for me to learn. I'm learning Blazor. I'm learning, obviously it gives me an opportunity to learn do more with semantic kernel. It's find a passion project that can unite these things, and you'll learn 10 times faster and more doing that than you will reading stuff. That's my takeaway.
Beautiful.
As we wrap up, obviously we're about to head into the Ignite time span as well. So there's a lot coming up, and I think the sessions are open now to look at. But as we wrap up, is there any Microsoft or just cloud native technologies that are sparking your interest aside from, maybe including AI as well? It's hard to avoid, right?
Copilot's everywhere. I think that's going to be cool. I just heard about Radius, which is haven't looked at it, to be honest. I need to look into it. So that could be really interesting. I think it's going to be how AI plays a part in every technology. You've seen Kubernetes Copilot. I think that's been spoken about. We're going to see some interesting stuff. Azure Cost Management Copilot, everyone loves that. We're just going to see that Copilot extending Copilots. That's going to be huge. I think bringing our applications or our data or our services into Copilots. That's an opportunity that is going to be really, really important, because these AIs, I imagine, like in health space, right, being able to bring in data from something like the American Medical Association, all those research journals, bringing that in with a patient record and say, hey, what are we missing? What could we be doing better here? Those sorts of scenarios will become possible when we integrate more things together into these AIs.
I think it used to be the saying, Microsoft Azure is the world's supercomputer or global computer or supercomputer, and now it's like Microsoft Azure is the world's AI, supercomputer. It's because of the capabilities of the Microsoft Cloud that is bringing all this capability to us, and I think you mentioned it a lot earlier as well around accessibility, bring the co-pilots and AI, bringing people into the industry a lot easier because of the technology. But I think there's a certain amount of, it's almost the right technology at the right time, because the likes of us in this room, there's been a tremendous amount of, like Dan, for example, playing around with Windows Server builds. The cloud wasn't a concept at that time. Back in the day, doing assembly languages, we've grown up with just the change in technology. I'm starting to sound really, really old. But you know what I mean. It's like we've gone through. We've managed the hardware. We've managed the actual server infrastructure. We've seen the view to more business orientated value thinking of using cloud services. But the next generation is coming online. It is coming in now, where cloud is all they know. They're straight into these capabilities already, and so the technology around AI is awesome. Almost at the right time.
Very exciting.
Thank you so much, mate. You've been so generous with your time. You're a great person. I've learned so much from you. Thank you for making the time. I've enjoyed all the discussion about your life, your journey, and all the knowledge, the technology that you put in the community and then you've talked about. Thank you so much, mate. We really, really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you both for really listening and taking the time. Really appreciate all you both do for the community, and I really appreciate the support the community gives you guys both. Thank you. Have an amazing day. Look out for all the AI.
Yeah. See you. Thank you.
Bye.
See you.